Mind me referring to my notes as I give out all your titles, because Colin is one seriously busy man. He is Government Chief Information Officer, CE of Internal Affairs, Secretary for Internal Affairs, Secretary for Local Government, and Chair of the Data and Information Reuse CE Steering Group. So we're very pleased to have you here to open Govis for us and to hear your speech today. So you're very welcome. Please come on up. So one of the things that's really handy about working with Govis is that you get to ask questions in a very innovative way. And so this morning you will have the opportunity to ask questions via a Twitter feed. So that is Govis 2012 is the conference tag, and this one here, #GCIO, is Colin's tag. So what will happen is that as Colin's doing his presentation and you have a question for him, just tweet that and Clifton's going to be picking it up and we can ask those questions at the end. Okay?
Kia ora. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Papa and Wellington on a wonderful, slightly warmer day than yesterday. When I said it would be a really good idea to have a Twitter feed with questions, I was being a bit bold, because I've now realised that this could be interesting to see how I trend, or whether I trend, in fact. So, and I'll be keeping an eye on Clifton. He's quite implacable, Clifton, but if you get some really tricky questions, I'll just keep talking so you don't get a chance to ask them. So thank you for the introduction. This is a conference that I think a lot of people in Government ICT look forward to every year. It is a really good chance for Government ICT people to talk to each other with a friendly audience. I've done a few different things in the last few months, a few different speeches, and you're always very aware that there's likely to be a journalist or other in the audience. So I'm keen that this is an opportunity to share in a very open way what's happening and what the challenges are. So the last time I spoke at Govis was a couple of years ago as a member of the ICT Strategy Group, and Brendan Boyle and David Small and I talked about the collective focus on Government ICT. So today's message hasn't really changed a lot, so the direction is the same, but I guess the key message that won't come as a surprise to you is that government's expectations are even higher than they have been over the last couple of years, and they are expecting really big things from Government ICT. They do see it as an area of real opportunity, and I think that's a fantastic thing for us to be considering. So as we look forward into how Government ICT is going to be shaped, then of course we cannot not think about Christchurch and the impact of Christchurch. And last year we were very influenced by the earthquakes. And there were some really, out of such adversity, of course, has come some really good opportunities and some things that I think that we can take forward. And last year's sessions had a very strong theme of working together, and I think on the programme today you've got some more Christchurch activities. I think it's a really good programme. It looks really interesting. There's clearly lots of innovative and interesting stuff being done in government. It's just a shame that it tends not to be that stuff that makes it onto the front page of the DOM. It's usually the other stuff that makes it onto the front page of the DOM. I guess we know that's the territory we're in, and we just have to kind of bite our lips and put up with that. It's really good to see the prominence given to open data and its reuse, which is a subject dear to my heart, and I'll talk a little bit more about that shortly. And it's really good also to see the emphasis on the all-of-government ICT programme of work led by the Office of the GCIO. And that's beginning to have quite a significant impact on some of the options and choices that agencies have available to them. So there's been a theme over the last couple of years, at least, of cooperation. And that's going to be part of my focus this morning. But I'd also like to talk about how the environment for government ICT has changed and some of the things we need to do in response. But first I get a chance to make an announcement. So as Brenda said, I'm the chair of the Data and Information Reuse Chief Executive Steering Group, and today I'm pleased to release the first report on the adoption of the Declaration on Open and Transparent Government that many of you have contributed to over the last 8 months. Cabinet approved the Declaration on Open and Transparent Government in August of last year, and we are seeing a genuine increase in the amount of data that agencies are releasing for reuse. All government departments are starting to incorporate the Declaration into their core business, and they've all assigned senior managers as data champions to lead this work. Now, something that's very encouraging for the ongoing success of this is that none of the departments have reported any insurmountable barriers to adopting the Declaration. So we're also finding that more businesses are working with departments to find new ways to share and reuse data. They're creating new smartphone apps and mashing up government data from multiple departments and from the private sector. And a lot of this data is available through web services too. At this stage, we're finding that most agencies are generally publishing or disseminating their data rather than licensing and releasing high-value data for reuse. But it's a very encouraging start, and the reuse of government data will only grow. The report and the spreadsheets, which I trust adhere to open data standards, are available on the ict.gov.nz website now. And I understand that the session on open data this afternoon is booked out. If you're going to it, you'll hear more about the results of the survey and the initiatives that agencies are taking. This is an area that I think has huge potential for us. And increasingly, I think we will see that the open data provides an opportunity for others to come and play and provide services that up until now we've been asked to provide. And in a world with shrinking budgets and increasing demands, being able to put data out there to be reused by others, I think, is a really good way of improving the service experience for customers. So, looking wider than how we share our data, it's obvious, I think, to all of us that the public sector is facing some big changes. These are going to seriously challenge how we provide our services and how we work together to plan and implement our ICT programmes. And one thing that is also going to change significantly is the leadership of government ICT. The direction and priorities for government ICT and better public services provide the policy framework for that government ICT must deliver in. As I've said, the government is looking for more from us, certainly looking for more coherent investment and management of ICT across service delivery, information, business processes and technical infrastructure. We've made some really good progress on utilising common capabilities, but we can and we must do more. We know there are structural barriers to interagency collaboration, but the government has signalled that it's prepared to shift some of these. Much of the change is driven by the government's priorities. It has certain expectations for how businesses and citizens interact with government, and these are the driving force behind many of the initiatives that we're currently advancing. So the government's expecting more from us, and it's expecting it to happen faster. Ministers have made their expectations clear at a policy level, and they expect leadership from the public sector to deliver. Changes are coming in the leadership of government ICT to make this happen. One of the biggest will be a requirement for agencies and officials to work together much more than we have been used to. Agencies will be part of this new approach by default. It is possible to opt out, but ministers expect that the tests for opting out will set the bar high. So if too many agencies decide to opt out, then we won't get the progress that we need. Now, this setting has been in place now since the direction and priorities was launched. But the change that the Cabinet is about to consider is this business of setting the bar very high. When we put out directions and priorities, we didn't define what the opt-out process would be. And so there have been cases where agencies have just decided that, well, I can just opt out. So assuming Cabinet decides to go with the recommendations that have been put in front of them, there will be a much more rigorous process that you'll be expected to go through if you're not going to take advantage of common capability. So I expect that will see more centralisation of the development of the strategic direction of government ICT, faster uptake of common capabilities, and agencies with common business objectives operating more of their ICT capability collectively in clusters. And a fair amount of this will centre around my role as Government Chief Information Officer. So the changes in government ICT will be delivered collaboratively, but they will be more centrally led than they have been in the past. The current fiscal constraint we're all operating under is a significant factor in our approach. In the past year or so, we've entered into a number of procurement contracts that are saving the government millions of dollars a year. You'll have heard about, or your agencies will already be involved in, infrastructure as a service. That means agencies only pay for the infrastructure that they use. That deal is expected to save up to $250 million over 10 years. And the all-of-government mobile voice and data contract will save up to $60 million over the next 5 years. These are not insignificant sums of money. But they actually do a lot more than just save money. They start to introduce innovations, and they're a different way of planning and operating our ICT services. They and other procurement contracts we're going to enter into introduce common capabilities to the government. So at a technology level, they are moving the public service into operating more as an integrated system, rather than a collection of individual agencies. And as I say, this direction of travel has been happening for a while, but it is certainly becoming a much stronger expectation from government that we will behave and act in a more integrated way. When the Prime Minister announced the government's Better Public Services programme in February, with the release of 10 priority areas the public sector is expected to focus on, he started the wider public service along a path that we have already been moving along in government ICT. So the priorities are reducing long-term welfare dependency, supporting vulnerable children, boosting skills and employment, reducing crime, and improving interactions with government. Agencies are expected to work together in these priority areas, each of which has a set of targets we are expected to meet. So essentially, the government expects us to be more responsive to the needs and expectations of people and communities, and be more willing to do things differently. And the public's expectations of us have changed. In many parts of their lives, they're making greater use of technology and online channels to access the services that they need in the way that they want to access them. We are all less tied to our homes to do this. I mean, most of you will have a smartphone or a tablet. Actually, most of you will probably have both because you're IT people. And you tend to like those things. I know I've got a smartphone and a tablet. People are more and more expecting to access our services when it suits them and in the way that suits them, not when it suits us. They also expect that they won't have to spend too much time trying to work out who provides the services they want. So increasingly, they're expecting a seamless and integrated experience as customers, and we often don't give it to them, as we all know. This will bring many non-technical challenges, and that's code for the business people are going to have to start thinking that way first and foremost, before the technology people can follow. So there is a big business shift here in terms of the way agency business leaders think. But one of the other challenges is going to be, I think, in the area of personal information. I don't want to go into debates about privacy. We had a fantastic conference a couple of months ago that did that. But there is a definite tension between using personal information to enable better public services and the protection of individual privacy. And that's something that I'm keen to encourage us to continue to have an informed and engaged debate about. There are some changes coming to the Privacy Act that will make it easier for agencies to share information in situations where people's health and safety are at risk. However, these changes relate to extreme situations. What about the more routine situations, which are likely to be an important part of the more seamless experience that we're trying to create for individuals dealing with government agencies? This is going to be a significant challenge for us as we move to more seamless government services. And I've been really encouraged by the debate that has been had over the last few months around our approach and society's, what's the comfort point in New Zealand society around the sharing of data. It is something that changes over time, and the informed debate helps us figure out where it's actually got to. So to create this integrated, more seamless experience for people dealing with the government, we do need to accelerate the government's ICT programme. This programme aims to provide services to businesses and citizens unlock value in the information we hold, optimise investment in service delivery and channels, and improve asset management. And in keeping with the collaborative approach, it is expected that we, the wider public service, will work as a single entity to achieve this. At the moment, our current arrangements mean we have a plethora of systems, processes and service delivery channels that are largely in silos within individual agencies. This separation between agencies exposes citizens and businesses to the internal complexities of government. Currently, citizens and businesses have to act as the integration point across agencies and channels. And I'm sure we can all think of services where people have to deal with more than one agency to get an entitlement. So two that I can think of from my time at Inland Revenue are student loans and working for families. So if you want to apply for an accommodation supplement or childcare assistance under working for families, you have to go to MSD. But if you want to apply for a family tax credit, you have to apply to Inland Revenue. And I know there are very sound reasons for that, but it actually doesn't make it very easy for the customer to figure it out. So we've been making some progress with some of the integration initiatives. Services like OneGov, iGov and Infrastructure as a Service are starting to consolidate technology platforms. The business.gov.nz web portal and Service Transformation Programme are consolidating channels, but they don't address the underlying complexities of agency-centric systems. So I think the future is going to look very different. In the future, we need an approach where government deals with the complexity and presents an integrated face to citizens and businesses. That means that we need to look at how we can align our agencies' business processes and share technology platforms and data as much as possible. And so in that space, there are gains to be made from having standard approaches and common capability and not having us all reinventing the wheel all the time, which we do sometimes end up doing. So we have some of the means to start getting there. iGov and the work on citizen-centric services will be part of the innovation at the service delivery level. Innovations in how agencies operate will also lead to common business processes. So in my view, standardisation, whether it's of back-end processes or technologies, will be the norm rather than the exception. The Service Transformation Programme is developing a new approach to delivering citizen-centric services that are designed around the needs of New Zealanders rather than the needs of agencies. There are now more than 20 agencies involved in service transformation, which cover approximately 90% of citizens' interactions with government. The programme envisages a significant shift of transactional services to the digital environment, which includes websites, mobile phones and kiosks. The proposed digital environment will need to deliver a number of important outcomes. It needs to deliver digital services that are widely accessible to New Zealanders and information that is easy to find and access. It needs to create simplified and connected services that operate across agency boundaries. It needs to increase transparency, participation and engagement, and to continuously reduce costs. By the end of this month, the programme will have completed its investigation into what services are delivered through digital and non-digital channels and will understand agencies' plans for the migration of services. It will also build a more comprehensive view of New Zealanders' preferences and requirements. This is all crucial information for the action we will take to achieve the government's results as set out in the Better Public Services programme. All the agencies responsible for the different priority areas in the Better Public Services programme have recently signed off their action plans for meeting the expected results and submitting them to Cabinet. I can tell you it's going to be pretty challenging based on what I've seen. As part of the process, the Service Transformation Programme went through to develop its action plan. We developed a set of targets that particular agencies are expected to achieve. We've been working with these 20-odd agencies and we've had very good engagement. There's been a really strong commitment across those agencies to us working together to achieve these outcomes. The targets that have been set are hard targets. However, we're building on what agencies are already doing and already planning to do. It will be a stretch to reach them, but everyone's willing to work hard to achieve them and have given their commitment to do so. You'll see the details of these action plans for the whole of the public service when they're released later this month. And I'm sure many of you will be involved in this at a number of levels, developing policy, looking at service delivery, and the technological challenges of integrating service delivery channels, regardless of where you work. So agencies are going to have to act differently in response to better public services. We're going to have to be less risk-averse, while always remaining aware of the risks in any situation. And given what I mentioned earlier about the tendency to put the bad news in the front of the Dominion Post, that's easy to say and quite difficult to do. But it is something that we're going to have to keep figuring out how we take some more calculated and managed and appropriate risks. So I think we're going to have to be fast followers, certainly much faster than we are now. For some agencies, there's a yawning chasm between the off-the-shelf systems most of our staff work with every day and what is available to them in their private lives. The current arrangements we have with some vendors have resulted in legacy systems that no longer suit our needs and which will cost a fortune to change. Being a fast follower is a matter of technology, attitude, and the arrangements we have to make it possible to adapt quickly. Obviously, the changes we are making to procurement have an important role to play here. There's also going to be change in the kind of jobs that we do. With the strong focus the government has on better results and improved services, we're all expected to focus on the things that will make the real difference that government and the public expect. So these action plans, the Better Public Service action plans, will include the targets the government expects us to reach. They're all measurable things that can make a real difference for people and business. We'll be working across departmental boundaries. And with government working as a more integrated system, organisational borders will matter less and become more porous. This presents many exciting opportunities for people in ICT, in service delivery and in design. We also have to learn how to influence the business people in our agencies by posing the big questions that challenge assumptions we have, either personal or organisational assumptions, that we will keep doing our own thing in the way that we have been used to. For example, when did your organisation last have a serious discussion about why it runs its own call centre? Or why you have your own financial management system? The information you are dealing with and the knowledge of the staff might be unique to your organisation, but the technology you use for these services, as we all know, is often not unique. As the people responsible for some of the biggest assets and investment your organisations make, you need to be asking these questions, and you need to be influencing the business people in your organisations to be answering those questions. So in summary, I think we're heading into some very interesting times. The government expects the public service to provide more seamless services to business, individuals and communities, and to deliver better results and improve services to New Zealanders. So over the next 2 days, you're going to be seeing and hearing about some wonderful initiatives that you and your colleagues are working on in your agencies. And I know how stimulating conferences like this can be and what a boost they can give you. When this session finishes, you'll hear about one such initiative that tackles a real and serious problem all government agencies and residents faced after the Christchurch earthquake. I'd encourage you to always keep in mind the bigger context of the changes we're making at a government-wide level, whether that is the Better Public Services Programme or the approach to government ICT. We are expected to work together more and to achieve what the government expects of us. So good luck with the Govis conference, and I'm sure it will be a great success. Thank you.
So, Colin, I'll pop down and collect the questions. It's interesting, isn't it, doing a presentation to a group and they're all writing and texting?
I'm used to that. Yeah, that's called boredom.
Okay. Well, I can't ask this one. Okay, so here's the first one. What is your greatest challenge for the next year?
Greatest challenge for the next year. I think in this particular space, in the all-of-government ICT space, I think the biggest challenge is starting to work with chief executives. I mean, I see my role, much as I'm really delighted to be here with the technology community, I actually see my role as working with the chief executive community, the heads of your agencies, and talking to them about their business challenges, talking to them about all of government ICT, and helping to what I often refer to as top cover, which those of you who work in the military agencies will recognise. So by having the right kind of conversations with your chief executives, I'm hoping that we will create the top cover that you will need to come through with common capability initiatives and initiatives that cross boundaries between agencies. I think that's probably going to be one of my biggest challenges, is starting to effect that cultural shift.
Okay. So what would be your best piece of advice to us here?
The best piece of advice, engage. We've had a really interesting history in this space for the last several years. I mean, I can go back to 5 or 6 years ago, being involved in a programme of work that had the intention of creating something, which I won't name, the intention of creating something that was going to be used across government. And it was really interesting to watch the will we, won't we dance that lots of agencies were doing. And it went something like this. I'm really busy. I've got lots to do. There's this whole of government thing happening over there somewhere. What's my assessment of the likelihood that it's going to actually fly? 40, 60 that it's going to fly. I won't bother getting involved because it will crash and burn, so I'll go and put my attention over here. And that's understandable learned behaviour. Why would you put energy into something that's not going to go anywhere? So that would be my biggest piece of advice, would be engage in the conversations, in the programmes of work, in the projects that are looking to develop a more coherent ICT strategy across government, that are looking to identify and implement elements on the common capability roadmap. So get involved, because if you don't, first of all, the strategy and the tactics will not be as good as they could have been, because it won't have your perspective in. That's the first and foremost point. The second point is they'll happen anyway, with or without you. You're better off to be in and involved in shaping and influencing and getting a better outcome for all of us.
One more?
Sure.
Okay. You mentioned being a fast follower. What are the qualities or characteristics of a fast follower?
Well, you have to be fast and you have to be prepared to follow.
Who wrote that one? Who wrote that one? Who was it?
Sorry, I'm being facetious. So a fast follower, I think hopefully we all know kind of broadly what a fast follower is. I mean, what I mean is that I don't see us being on the bleeding edge of technology implementation unless we've thought very carefully about it and it's in quite a contained part of our business. There was a really good presentation by Rob Fife a few years ago at DevCon. Did anyone see Rob at DevCon a few years ago? Look, most people didn't, so I'll pinch his story. I thought it was a great story. He talked about innovation, and he said, the grab-a-seat thing. He said that was an interesting example of innovation. He said that the problem with grab-a-seat, when we were thinking about it, somebody came forward with the idea, and we were quite attracted to it. So, of course, as you do, we sent the business people and the accountants away to do the numbers, think about the business, and they came back. They couldn't get any data. Nobody had done it anywhere else in the world. They couldn't get any good data, and so they just didn't know whether it was going to be successful or whether it was going to bomb. And it took them a while to kind of come to the point where they said, look, if we run this for 6 months, we can lose an awful lot of money, but we can actually contain it. Are we prepared to take that risk? Because we don't have good data, we don't have good information, nobody's done it before, and it might go pear-shaped. And they decided, yeah, we'll take the risk, we're going to go for it, we'll monitor it closely, and we need to be prepared. He said, we can always call it a pilot. After 6 months, we say, oh, actually, that was a pilot, we're just stopping it. So he was quite candid about that. So they didn't know what it was all going to look like, whether it was going to work or not. And then he made the most telling comment. He said, I wouldn't take that approach with my engineering services. to which everyone in the room drew a very long sigh of relief. So what Rob was saying was, if you innovate, absolutely innovate, no question about that, but be risk aware, don't be risk averse, saying we can't do it. There are parts of your business where you can take innovative calls and where you can be that fast follower, where you can say, look, this approach or this technology might apply over here. We'll give that a go, but we're going to contain it, we're going to manage it, and we're going to make sure we kind of keep it in a box until we're sure that it can be opened out and used more broadly. So you might not bring a really leading edge innovation into the core of the tax system or the welfare system. You might use it somewhere else where the risk profile is different.
Well, thank you, Colin. That was really excellent and very stimulating. I'm just going to reach underneath my secret stash at the table here because we have a little thank you on behalf of the organising committee and all the attendees here today. You can see it's got your name on, so it's definitely for you. Yep, definitely for you.
Thank you.
And thank you very much. Thanks.